All right, thanking God once again, this time for second chances, but with a word of caution, also helping us or asking him to help us overcome the need for unnecessary recovery. Meaning, this is a chapter where we're going to see him free the people from the leadership that has been guiding them astray, but we're going to also see how deeply infected they have become by the time that they have spent basically doing dirt and adopting shady ways. In this chapter that roughly breaks into two halves, one running from verses 1 through about verse 11, second half going from verses 12 through 23, I think. That first half dealing with what we want to title this chapter, I guess, and let's say, these men have taken their idols into their hearts, describing the pattern through which the leadership in Judah has led the nation astray, at the point where God is now going to free the people from that leadership. However, in the second half of the chapter, he's going to talk about the degree to which he is going to start over with the cleansing, naming 3 righteous men who would only be able to save themselves and not their family in the degree of destruction or cleansing that God is about to bring. In those first 11 verses, though, God is going to start out by saying in verse 1, "Then certain of the elders of Israel came to me and sat before me, and the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, these men have taken their idols into their hearts," thus the title, "and set the stumbling block of their iniquity before their faces. Should I indeed let myself be consulted by them?" In the first 5 verses that are going to set forth that dilemma, stating implicitly, no, he's not going to let himself be inquired of. And more importantly, he's not necessarily going to send word back through Ezekiel or the legitimate prophets. He's saying he's going to answer them himself, setting forth the pattern for that in the next set of verses, verses 6 through 11. He is going to say he is not only going to deal with them directly by giving them a direct answer, he is going to deal with the prophets who, shockingly enough, it's going to say in verse 9, "And if the prophet is deceived and speaks a word, I, the Lord, have deceived that prophet, and I will stretch out my hand against him and will destroy him from the midst of my people. And they shall bear their punishment. The punishment of the prophet and the punishment of the inquirer shall be alike. That the house of Israel may no more go astray from me." That the house of Israel may no more go astray from me, nor defile themselves any more with all their transgressions, but that they may be my people and I may be their God, declares the Lord God. Which goes back to the purpose for him doing this in the first place, which is not simply the destruction of the wicked or those who have been leading the people astray. It's to restore the people to a right relationship with truth and God. Verse 5 saying, "I, the Lord, will answer him as he comes with the multitude of his idols, that I may lay hold of the heart of the house of Israel, who are estranged from me through their idols." That stated, he's going to go on to talk about the degree to which the cleansing is going to take a toll on the people who have been led astray. In verses 12 through 14, he's going to set the standard, saying in verse 12, "And the word of the Lord came to me, son of man, when a land sins against the Lord by acting faithlessly, and I stretch out my hand against it and break its supply of bread and send famine upon it." He's going to go on to, in that pattern, set forth the way he will deal with them. Similarly, in famine in verses 12 through 14, in wild beast or through wild beasts in verses 15 and 16, in verse 17 or verses 17 through 18 by sword, and in verses 19 through 20 by pestilence, stating the same pattern in each case. If I deal with these lands according to these judgments, even if Noah, Daniel, or Job were in these lands, they would only deliver their own lives, as we have mentioned before. They would not so much as save the lives of their own kids. However, in verses 21 through 23, the end of the chapter, he is going to say, how much more is he going to deal with his own people, Jerusalem, in verse 21. However, though, in verse 22, he's going to say that he will still leave them some survivors, even though in the typical circumstance, even if Noah, Daniel, and Job were in that city, they would save their own lives. As we have said before, for Jerusalem or for his people Israel, he is going to leave them, as we have seen before, a remnant. However, with regard to that remnant, he is going to say in the latter half of verse 22, going on through verse 23, the end of the chapter, When they come out to you and you see their ways and their deeds, you will be consoled for the disaster that I have brought upon Jerusalem, for all that I have brought upon it. They will console you when you see their ways and their deeds, and you shall know that I have not done without cause all that I have done in it, declares the Lord. Reminding me of a couple of things. There are times in life where, as the word says, even if favor is shown to the wicked, they don't really change, my ad lib, or they don't learn what's right. And so at this point, even though God is, through his mercy, leaving them a remnant, after all they have been through, it sounds like in Southern parlance, they're still going to come out acting a fool. And so much like the elders in the first half of the chapter, it seems that God is counseling Ezekiel to be wise in the way that he is dealing with folks that seem super humble when they're coming to him in a time of need. See, because we all have a tendency to, as we've heard the term before, make foxhole confessions, or when we are in a tough spot, seek out the God that in our prosperity or our comfort, we kind of don't really have a whole lot of time for. And so he is saying, be careful of people who seem kind or humble or really appealing in desperate circumstances. And be sure to understand their deeper character, because that is what you are likely to see once the pressure is relieved. And moreover, you might want to save your tears next time you see God step in and personally deal with people who in their hearts haven't actually changed.